Good.
All is well.
Well, welcome everyone on this Friday, June 12th already. And we are here, Female Wave of Change, in a special session with Tina Thomson from, right now, United States, New York, originally Greece, and there's South Africa there. So I think you will share us a little bit about that in a minute. Tina is one of Female Wave of Change honorary ambassadors, and she earned that title because she was really there from the beginning and did a lot of us, and even the whole South African community came because of Tina's connection with Female Wave of Change. It started there. So it's really great to have you ladies here, Tabella and Mom Yvonne as well. So Tina, just short, Tina is a Chief Operating Officer of FWoC, a design and innovation studio, improving urban equity. Well, I love to hear what that is. She's an author, experienced leader, and certified executive coach. Her leadership coaching transforms individuals and companies, keeping them relevant as the world of work morphs every 3 months. Her roles have ranged from PR and branding to HR and labor law. She has owned and run 4 businesses. So welcome, Tina. It's really a pleasure to see you here. So let's first take some time that you introduce yourself to each and everyone listening in.
Thank you, Inga, and it's an absolute honor to be with you and the ladies. I didn't know you were going to read that introduction. I like to just say, you know, I'm a citizen of the world, and I care very deeply. I think my heritage, which incidentally, I've never lived in Greece. I'm South African born and bred, and proudly so. But my heritage is 100% Greek on, you know, both sides, my mom and dad. And I think the spirit of ubuntu on my South African side, coupled with the Greek philotimo, which if you directly translate it means, so philo is friend, and timi is honor. So, you know, ubuntu and philotimo combined mean that my love of human beings and my deep compassion for human beings is what defines me. I do have a day job and I do coach as well, but I like to be defined by who I am as opposed to what I do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I do agree. And you're a mom and a mother-in-law and a sister and
yes, yes,
more. Yes. Okay.
My family is everything to me.
Yeah, I know. That's also why you moved to the United States.
That's right. That's right. I felt that I needed to be on the same piece of land as my son. He's my only child, and those of you who know my story know he's a miracle child, and I know every mother says that, but he truly has defied medical science. And, you know, I just felt I needed to be close to him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's, especially if you look at the situation right now in the world with COVID-19, there is more awareness that things like this, that is even more important, the things that really matter in life, and being close to your family is even one of them.
Absolutely, absolutely,
mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Tina, we have experienced some unprecedented global issues over the past 3 to 4 months with COVID-19. In your opinion, what traits, characteristics, behaviors of leadership does the world need going forward?
Wow, I mean, yes, you said it. We've seen unprecedented change. I think we've had plenty of examples of what leaders should not do. And I say that with respect, but often we do learn by inverse. But I do think that, you know, we have to have a complete change going forward. You know, behavioral science has shown that actually all those years ago, Machiavelli had it partly right. You know, he said that when we look at leaders, when we judge others, but especially leaders, we look at two characteristics mainly. We look at, and I'm quoting now, how lovable they are, and in our modern language that is, you know, are they warm? Are they trustworthy? Do they have compassion? And the second thing is we look at how fearsome they are, and in our modern day language, you know, are they competent? Are they strong leaders? And so, researchers agree that those are the two primary dimensions, and that's what we need going forward. And I just want to, if I may, Ingun, just talk about trust, because, you know, when you have got compassion and you're lovable and you are competent, you build trust. You can't be a leader without followers. And so your followers need to be able to trust. And trust, I just want to define, has 5 components. The first one is empathy. You know, if you aren't compassionate and you don't have empathy, you can't even begin to develop that relationship, which is going to end up in trust. So compassion, you know, and empathy first. Of course, there's reliability. There's the competency, and integrity. And then finally, the 5th one, and for me a really important one, is vulnerability. Because whilst empathy might open the door for you to start to build trust with people, it's the vulnerability, the reality, the authenticity of the leader that keeps that going. So, you know, I think that is, you know, what is needed going forward.
Of course, within the female wave of change, we always talk about the masculine way, the feminine way. So not so much about male and female, but very much more the feminine and masculine way. And when I hear you say, I immediately think this is so much more the feminine way. So do you think that we need more authentic feminine leaders?
I definitely do. You know, my value system, where I totally value the men in our lives as well. In fact, I've often seen that the greatest champions of women are men. But those qualities of leadership, and for example, you know, you can see it in, you know, my hero for the moment, my heroine is the leader of New Zealand. You know, Jacinda, as a prime minister, has shown us, you know, what a compassionate leader does. I mean, she's had those 3 major crises. You know, she had the horrific terrorist attack. Then she had the deadly volcano, followed by COVID now. And, you know, this past week, they have 0 cases. And if you start to look at what she did as a leader, it truly was just listening to her people and being able to identify. Okay, that compassion is putting yourself into someone else's shoes. She identified. She put on a hijab when she went down to the victims of the terrorist attack. She actually, and I don't even know if this hit the news, but she actually hauled her own Minister of Health over the coals when he contravened her lockdown publicly. You know, so strong. There's that strength there. Those two areas where we judge our leaders. You know, are they compassionate, and or have they got the strength and the competence? So there you've seen those feminine values where there's this quiet, gentle, but strong approach.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And it's not just the people in New Zealand that love her for it, but it is worldwide that, well, especially women, but more and more men really love her approach and value for it. Yeah. And we see more women leaders right now.
Right. Because even when she's criticized, and she's criticized often, okay, she's so gracious. You know, there's no ego in her rebuttals. She just stands there and she's so powerful with her answers, you know. And I think that for me is the epitome of leadership. I was asked by a group of younger people that I mentor, Tina, show us a global leader that brings hope to the world. Of course, I went with, you know, Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa, and they said, no, a living leader of a country. And she's top, you know, she is top. And there are very, very few others. Very few, sadly.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Well, we as Female Wave of Change, we totally agree, because she received the Female Wave of Change Global Leadership Award at the conference in South Africa last year in September.
That's right. She hadn't even yet had these crises, you know, so incredible.
Yeah. Well, if you talk about leadership, of course, we are moving forward right now. You know, we have had this whole situation with COVID, and there was fear and there was uncertainty. There still is fear, there still is uncertainty, but people are moving slowly out of this situation and wondering, where is it going, and what will my role be? There is, you know, of course, we have the health crisis, but we have mental health issues. There's the whole economy, what is happening there. So there are so many issues right now that's going on. How do you envision the future, Tina? And do you think that the world will ever go back to a situation as it was before COVID-19 hit us?
I hope not, Ingen. I really hope not. You know, something that really gets my back up is when you hear people, you know, and whether they are business leaders or other leaders talking about, you know, planning or strategizing for the new normal. So no such thing. Nothing about what we're going through and have been through is normal. They need to change the language around that. You know, perhaps they should plan for the new reality. We need to plan for a life with COVID. It's not going to be in the short term that there's a solution to this thing. You know, when people start to put dates to, you know, you hear people say, okay, on the 30th of June, we're going to open up. No one knows. No one really knows. And we've seen how places that opened up early are spiking now. The deaths are, you know, so what I want to say is I really hope we don't go back to what we were before that. And, you know, if you think back to last year when people used to talk about 2020 clear vision, and there were so many jokes around that. Well, personally, I believe we are seeing clearly now. We're seeing what damage we've done to the world, to our planet, to our home. We've seen what damage has been done to people. You know, our world is in pain. You've seen, you know, worldwide as well, the uprising and the protests. We need to hang on to this clearer vision. We need to stay with this uncomfortable feeling. Change can't happen without feeling uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And we need to be uncomfortable for years to come. This is not a short-term thing. You know, I like to leave people by saying, what are you going to do to stay uncomfortable? And it's a hard question. But people have been traumatized, and they are still being traumatized. You know, we've got a second crisis on top of COVID now. And I believe it's all long-term for our greater good. I really do. But we have to understand that as we plan for the future and as leaders look to the future, they have to have compassion, because we're dealing with people in pain. You know, neuroscientists today that a sense of unfairness, and actually when I speak to people, and I speak to a huge variety and range of people in a huge demographic, the one word that keeps coming up is unfairness. So not only the recent events that we've witnessed so tragically through our screens, that we've visually seen so much blatant murder, for, you know, but even prior to that, even, you know, in early days of COVID, was the word unfairness. And neuroscientists have shown that actually unfairness isn't just a physical phenomenon. It activates networks in the brain similar to physical pain. Mm-hmm. And so if leaders start to, and when I talk leaders, by the way, we can lead without title. You don't need to have a title to lead. Every single one of us has a responsibility to lead. And so, you know, there can be change. If our leaders are planning ahead, they need to have that compassion and to consider what's going on and the people they are leading. They need to listen. You know, one of the biggest things of being empathetic is to listen carefully, listen deeply, you know, and yeah, I mean, I'm going down a long path here, but yes, you sparked something in me that I'm passionate about. I don't ever want us to go back to what we were in January and February of 2020.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you, and you know that with Female Wave of Change from the start, it is our vision to create that better world for all, you know, a more human, more connected, more conscious, more sustainable world, and we were already working on it. The thing is, I hear you, our leaders, you know, we expect a lot from them, and we have published a document right now where we call upon the leaders, but also upon the global citizens to take action. You know, it is almost impossible to expect the leaders of the world right now to find the solutions, to create the solutions, because they have no idea. They're lost. You know, this is something they have never seen before, so I have no idea. And it is everything that we all together can do from this moment on to create that better world, but also to take responsibility, to take the next step, and not wait for someone else to come with the solutions, but to create the solutions.
Absolutely. I mean, you're spot on. And the document that Female Wave of Change put out is something I'm very proud of. Well done. Well done to every one of you that fed into that. It is brilliant. Mm-hmm. And you're quite correct, Inga, we do. Every single one has a responsibility. And you know, what you've just said, someone had said to me, you know, well, where and what and how and what would you do, Tina? You know, along the lines of what I was saying earlier, we need healing, okay? We need healing in every way. And we do have a case study that worked. And it is back to my beloved South Africa, where Nelson Mandela created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Mm-hmm. And we need truth and we need reconciliation. We need a reset. You know, the people who call the COVID area a pause. No, it's not a pause because we don't want to go back, okay? We need to reset. And I think that, you know, every organization, big or small, every nonprofit, every family, every corporate can create those platforms mm-hmm. for truth and reconciliation. So as you say, Ingrid, we don't need to wait for governments to do it. And I think you'll remember way back when we launched Female Wave of Change in the US, in New York, where I said, that I believe from my experience that governments don't run the world, corporations run the world, you know. And so that's where we need intervention. That's where we need leadership. We need platforms for healing.
Mm-hmm. If you look at the corporations, because I do believe there's a lot of power there, for them as well, you know, it has to be a new perspective from how they envision the world, how they envision society, because the way they have been thinking so far is in money and power.
Oh yes.
So they have to start rethinking, and that is also what we've been talking about in the statement in the document, about redefining success. What really is success? How can they create impact? And that is for them also a totally different way of thinking.
Right. Right, absolutely, you know, and I'd like to say, because I'm not yet an expert, but I'm hoping to become one soon, in psychological safety. Mm-hmm. So again, it's a woman who's written the book, who did the research. She's actually a professor at Harvard Business School. And the book I'm referring to in particular is called The Fearless Organization. And I believe that everything that's in there, and why I say I want to become an expert, I want to actually do a course in psychological safety coaching. I think that decidedly is the future of companies, of organizations, of corporations. Again, it's the safe space. Again, it's this platform for telling the truth without repercussions, because we know so many people have been victimized, have lost their jobs because they are attempting to share the truth with their leaders, you know, and sometimes it's just a supervisor. We're not talking CEOs of companies, but at every level, that's critical. And, you know, the research that she brings up, because she didn't actually set out to research psychological safety, but she came upon it by accident when she was doing research in a hospital, watching what happened amongst certain people who didn't speak up. And then actually Google did a 5-year research as well to look at, you know, why do certain teams perform better than others when they're identical in terms of qualification and experience. And it is that level of psychological safety. And I personally have been in organizations where, you know, you'd speak up 2 or 3 times, you'd get crushed every time. And so you stop contributing, you stop bringing those brilliant ideas and innovation. And without psychological safety in the workplace or in any organization, you have people of talent that aren't contributing to the solutions. And we have problems. We need collective brain power to find those solutions.
Mm-hmm. But also with the things in mind, like our environment, you know, to really take care of the planet, because things like that is also a responsibility very much of corporations, governments, of course, and not anymore about talking, you know, we can solve it 2030. We have to solve it now. This is the moment. So this whole mindset, it has to change. And I love what we have been talking with our global ambassador, Visila Bokoko, last week. And she mentioned, if you have the right mindset, the right heart set, and the right soul set, we can change the narrative.
100%. Bravo, Basila. Absolutely. You know, I was going to say that, you know, in line with compassion and empathy, it's only love that's going to make the change. Forget about the laws. They've failed us, okay, worldwide. Yep. The way forward is with love, you know, and if each individual, that mindset that Bisela talks about, if each individual can harness that feeling. So, you know, it's common practice when someone is suffering with anxiety, they're advised to meditate or to pray and to visualize a person or people that they love. Because first of all, that feeling actually is very healing. It releases all sorts of chemicals in the brain that are healing. But if you tap into that feeling and use that as you go forward, we can heal, we can plan and not damage every area of life. You know, we've seen how removing human beings out of the environment has healed the environment. You know, one of the silver linings of COVID, as painful as that is for people who are grieving. But, you know, we've being handed all these lessons. We need to pay attention. If we pay attention to what we've seen over the last 4 months on every aspect, not only through COVID, but also through the protests and the uprising, if we start to educate ourselves and extend our hands to one another, not a hand out, but a hand up, we can, you know, create a far better world. You know, we have to have that feeling of gratitude and thankfulness and love going forward.
Yeah, I think so. I agree. Thank you, Tina. I want us to ask the others who are in this call You probably hear a lot, and I see, for instance, Adriana being very enthusiastic about the sociological research and things like that. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question to Tina or give feedback, comments? The line's open. Adriana?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you for bringing that in, Tina, and all that you covered today. You touched very important aspects of our lives, starting from our inner resources, so dealing with what we already have, and also touching the psychological safety aspect, because nowadays more than ever we see these thin line between trust and the psychological safety, which encompasses everything that you're talking about. So it brought me to a nice study about the Henry Ford, what he did in his company and how he moved from the failure to a successful company when he was really touching this point. So he was wondering what was going on in the company and how the employees and his team could do to make it a better company, and nobody was feeling safe to talk about that until a successful meeting with someone that brought all the issues to the table, and that's when they reverted everything in the company. So it was about feeling safe, having the courage, talking about your values, and also through a collaboration, being in a better place for all of us. So thank you for bringing that.
Oh, thank you. That is an incredible case study, and I remember reading about.
Yes.
You know, it is. And let's face it. You know, to be a leader, you need to have followers. Can't call yourself a leader if you don't have followers, and followers need to be able to trust the leader. So trust is critical. You know, and as I say, without opening up yourself and staying vulnerable, you can't build trust as a leader. So thank you for that, Adriana.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you. And it also reminded me of the awareness. So creating awareness of who we are and maybe changing the questions from why, which are so limiting and judging. So maybe we can start by what.
Yes, yes.
It's a good shift in our mindsets as well. Thank you so much.
Very much so. Yes, the open-ended questions and not directing. Good.
Tina, it's Tebello here. There is, you know, there's a lot obviously that's happening. There's the movement around, you know, Black Lives Matters. There's movement around keeping, you know, involving women, involving people or, you know, from minority groups. And my question is, how do you stay positive with everything that's happening? I mean, this morning, or this week alone in South Africa, we've had 4 cases of young women that have been killed by their partners, boyfriends, you know? And I find that at times when I read these things, I get so angry, and I have to calm my mind down and remember that, you know, there's still also positivity in the world, because we're doing so much to try and make a difference. But sometimes when all of these things come and happen, and then there's also COVID at the same time. So how does one keep one positive and energized and continuing to work for a better future?
Tebello, that's such a powerful question, and it's one that I ask myself all the time. My answer is always spiritual. I'm very deeply spiritual, and that's where I get the not only the positivity, but there's that inner joy that no one can take away. And I want to define it clearly. It's a big difference to have the joy as opposed to being happy. You know, happiness is circumstantial, but joy is deep. So it's extraordinarily difficult, but I probably get shot down for this. But when I want to say, hold on to that anger. We need to stand up and speak up, and we need to protest. Okay, protests, not non-violent protests, peaceful protests, are twice as likely to succeed as those that are not peaceful or that have conflict. Plus, it only takes a threshold of 3.5% of a population to effect positive change. Okay, it's never failed. 3.5% of a population have never failed to bring about change. And so we can't just sit back and have the anger and have the joy taken from us. You can't allow the joy to go. But that temporary, it's so stressful. I physically got ill at the beginning of COVID. There's, some of you may know my story, but I have a trigger that goes off when you talk about domestic abuse. And I've gone cold. There's a shelter close to where I live, and I've supported the shelter for a couple of years. And when I started to get emails about how the sorry folks, how the rate of domestic violence had rocketed the minute we were in lockdown. Okay, it's frightening enough to be locked up and on your own because of COVID. But imagine being locked indoors with your abuser. Okay, so, but what can we do? You know, what we do, for me, number one, of course, is pray, because there's nothing that we can do, more powerful for me than prayer. But then there's also the activism. Then there's also, okay, what are we going to do and how are we going to do this? And this very morning, okay, I joined a prayer session in South Africa, out of Pretoria. It's 6 o'clock in the morning for me, 12 noon, where the pastor said he's mobilizing the men to march against femicide. I've never even heard the word femicide. And it's obviously in context of what you're saying, is that in the last few days, these women have been murdered at the hands of their partners, their spouses. I don't know the details. I hadn't had a chance yet to read the news, but I'd heard that. And it's illegal. Okay, it's illegal. He appealed to us who were listening to be creative and come up with a way that they can march without going against the law, because he said the police have already phoned him to say, and he's a bishop actually, they phoned him to say it's illegal, you can't. But he says, we will find a way. So all of that, sorry, Tabelo, but to say to you, you have to hold on to that anger and you have to do something with it, and that's how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks.
If I can add something to it, it's there's so much happening right now, and everything is adding up to the situation that we are already in. And we as individuals can only do so much, and of course you can speak up and have your voice heard, and you can join certain things. That is very important. But you can just do so much. And yesterday I was talking to some members of our team of the Middle East and Northern Africa MENA team. It's a terrible situation right there now. It's really awful. I got so frustrated when I was reading what was happening. But immediately this morning, we put some things in place to start that we're going to do more there, and that is the thing you can do, is as an individual, well, first of all, share what is frustrating is, and share what is making you angry, because I was so frustrated that they did not speak up and they did not let us hear what was going on. And if we know, we can do and we can act. So we already have done things this morning. Yeah, what Tina said is to put things in place to do something. And that is, we need each other right now. And that is also very important, that we support each other. And if we can, that we take the next step.
Correct. And to tell the stories. That's exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Stories have the power to heal, to educate, and to create change.
Mm-hmm.
You have to speak up, and it takes courage. It takes courage. And I use courage in its pure definition. It comes from the French word "coeur," and "coeur" means heart. Okay. You have to have that pure motivation, and from the gut, from your heart, out of love, to fight the good fight.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Mami Van.
Thanks so much. Yes. Thank you so much, Ingrid, for hosting this very deep and touching conversation. Tina, you've really touched the core of our hearts. And I think what I'm taking away from what you're sharing with us is that we really need to delve deeper and lead from the heart. No matter how I look at it, forgiveness is the way to go. There is so much self-hate around. And as we try to navigate and find the answers, we actually hate others.
Yes.
And that's not the way to go. You've touched two things that keep me awake every day, which is what I believe in, is the power of story, that we need to let go of all those deep-seated cuts, the bleeding inside.
Yes.
But what I'd like you to share with us, it's this thing that keeps me awake at night, is the loss of life, where actually people kill themselves. Look at the statistics of suicide worldwide, will be shocked that it goes faster than even COVID-19. And then, yes, you mention what I believe in, power of prayer, being stillness, telling our stories. But what else can we do to inspire zest for life as leaders? So that someone today who's thinking that I've tried everything, I better take my life, how do we turn that around?
Yvonne, you're just so wise, and I'm so humbled by your question. And it's a very difficult one for me, in that my mother took her own life.
Mm-hmm.
I have written my memoirs, and I have written a lot. And where I'm going with this is that I believe that we have to just keep sharing stories. I think people need to see you know, okay, if she did it and she survived, I can do it too. I think that's where people who are desperate, people who are suffering and in pain, who can't really find the strength, you know, when people are that low, they don't, you know, you can't say to them, okay, you know, do this and do that. They can't actually. But if they hear a story, which is the most ancient way of communicating, and they can see the live person, you know, I fought long and hard to use my name when I published, because there wasn't a publisher in the world that wanted to publish my story, because it does involve whistleblowing at a very high level, and they were terrified for my life. But I knew that I needed to share the story. I needed to, women particularly, but you'll be surprised at how many men have contacted me and said, you know, your story of, because there's many, and they individual little, they stand alone stories. They'd say, even the men would say, that particular story empowered me to blow the whistle. Thank you. That particular story empowered me to get out of an abusive relationship. Thank you. So that is the reason why people share stories. It's so that others can, something in there can touch a nerve that says, hold on a minute. If this woman didn't only survive, but she thrived after all of this, then I can do it too. Because this is an ordinary individual, you know, who didn't have everything that needed, you know, no resources to recover, but she did. I think that is very, very a useful tool for people that are desperate. They need, first of all, as Ingun said, we need to reach out to one another. We need to support one another. We need to hear one another. The listening is critical. Some people just want you to listen. They don't want any words of wisdom. First of all, they can't even hear at that point, but they want to tell their stories. That has the power to heal and to uplift.
Thank you so much, Tina. And I think we needed each other. We needed this moment. May there be also a deep healing on your journey. And may your mom and all those who took their lives, and we just pray that they rest in everlasting peace without judgment.
Amen. Amen and amen. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mommy Van. Renee, Odeline, is there anything that you want to add? Yes?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a totally different subject. So I was hesitating a little bit because we were, you know, on this more high personal and spiritual level. Anyhow, I'm going to ask you the question and we'll see where it leads us. So currently in Female Wave of Change, we also are setting up a youth council. And it would be lovely to, I think they have their particular role to play in the change and in the direction that we are taking. And it would just be lovely to hear some of your thoughts on particularly what the youth, in your opinion, in your views, could help and can do for us.
Certainly. And I tell you what's really interested me. So I lead two completely separate companies. Okay, so Open Box, which Ingun read out, is a very young, up and coming, cutting edge organization. The oldest person is 35. Okay, so a very, very young team. Brilliant. The other team that I lead is in a more traditional business at KUCP, so Kingston Ulster Commerce Park. It's also out of the city of New York. It's upstate New York. And as I say, a much more mature workforce. And to watch the profound difference between how they reacted to lockdown was astounding to me. Whereas the older, more mature team, they coped, okay? They weren't needy, they weren't, and not that the younger team were needy, that's the wrong word, but they didn't need me as much, or they didn't need each other as much, okay? Whereas the younger team, every single day, we check in on camera. And, you know, my principal at OpenBox is an unbelievable leader in every sense of the word. And he has mandated me to actually have a 1-hour session with each one every week. And obviously those are confidential, so I can't share them. But the youth need us. Plus, it's the youth that have always been able to protest and to bring about that change. So we need to support them more than ever. We need exactly what you're saying, you know, and I would gladly, you know, if it's on a weekend, because I have to watch the time during the week, or early morning my time, I would gladly speak with them and share. As I said, you know, we have to tell the truth. We have to be vulnerable. And I will open up on anything anyone asks. I mean, I've put most of it in my book anyway, but you know, there are obviously untold stories. If any of it can help even one individual, then I'm willing to do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you, Tina.
Good.
My honor, my honor.
Thank you. I got a message from Odeline that she's not able to speak. She's in an environment that she cannot unmute herself. So she's thanking you for everything. So what I think for now, we are almost on the hour. Yes, we are. So I think that I want to end up this wonderful session. There's a lot shared, a lot about the whole situation right now, but also about the future, the way we envision leadership and the way that we think that we can move forward and be the change. So, so much wisdom. Thank you very much, Tina. Thank you for sharing. And we really like you to be more involved so that we can tap into your wisdom, because I do believe it is important. And the Youth Council is one of the organizations, but also, you know, while we will be setting up the teams right now to work on the 5 pillars, also very important to move forward there. And we need your knowledge, your wisdom there as well. So we are going to call you more often. So thank you very much, Tina. Thank you for all who are here, and you know, all who is watching this these recordings after this session. I hope you had a lot of inspiration as well, and really have the feeling that there are new opportunities for you out there and new ways to move forward. But let's stick together, really find that tribe and move forward and do it together, not alone. So thank you very much, each and every one of you, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to you too. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.